Hi, I'm Chris from Lone Aspen.
And I'm Jeff. Long-term wilderness living skills comes down to the fine line between practicality and sustainability. Remember that a skill is non-perishable. You can't drop a skill, you can't lose or misplace a skill. A skill can't be taken away from you. And as far as pack weights go, skill weighs absolutely nothing. Chris and I always advocate less gear, more skills, because that is sustainability. For example, in our equipment that we're looking for, we look for time-proven designs and extremely durable materials, which is one of the reasons why we don't use things like waterproof, breathable laminates. We use oilskin. Now, our workload out here, living out here, is tremendous. That's why I have bags under my eyes today, because I'm very tired. And so you come into a moment of practicality. And so we want to talk a little bit about fire starters and the fire starting methods we use. We're not going to be lighting any fires. To see us lighting fires, check out our other videos. Now, a lot of people study primitive skills like bow drill, fire plow, fire piston, fire pump, and so forth. And yes, we know how to do these skills. And for all intensive purposes in the modern times, it's impractical to be doing day in and day out. So we use pretty modern fire starters, but we're also very specific about which ones we've come to like over the years. For example, in the middle of winter when it's 10 below in the morning, do I get up and use my ferrocerium rod to start a fire? No, I actually have a trioxane tablet and a cigarette lighter in my arm pocket, and that's how I light the fire in the morning, because you just got to get up and get the work done. So that said, this is one of the main types of fire starters we use, just talking about the ferrocerium rod in generic. Now, a lot of people mistakenly call this flint. This is not flint. Flint is a rock or a stone. Ferrocerium is a compound of 7 or 8 types of powders compressed into a rod of some kind. I don't know the whole science behind it. However, when you get one of these, when you first get it, it's covered in a black paint to prevent it from oxidizing. Scrape that paint off, and you'll notice it gets very shiny, like a piece of shined metal, and that will be your striking surface. But then if you throw it in your pack and leave it there for a while, it'll turn this dull battleship gray. One of these compounds in the rod oxidizes, and I don't know what that is, but you're going to have to shine it up again before it really takes a good spark. When using these, don't use the leading edge of your blade, because the very high temperature of the rod will take the temper out of your knife, and pretty soon you'll start noticing chips and pits. And so, as the subtlety of knife design that we're looking for, is we look for a very sharp back edge on the back of our knife, with which we can strike our rods with. This is a pretty good design, but actually it's not our favorite.
Right. The other thing about this, there's a manufacturer claims or something to be wary of if they say how hot the temperature of the spark is. Maybe not the most accurate thing. The other manufacturers' claims when it comes to these things say, okay, it's good for 10,000 or 50,000 strikes. You don't think in your head that means 10,000 or 50,000 fires. These things take a little bit of practice to use. One of the drawbacks to this design, in the bottom of it here, they have, there's a little space, and they have some type of limited amount of tinder to use, which, I don't know, in my opinion would be good for maybe a handful of fires. And that gets then going into like learning your native tinders, which you should always find out about. But better than this one right here, our favorite one to use is this, the classic Magnesium Block, and it's got the little ferrocerium rod insert in it. And this is nice because the magnesium itself is the tinder, and then you have the striker here, like we talked about. You could use your knife blade, or not the blade of the knife, but the back. If it's a nice uncoated blade and has a nice 90-degree angle on the back of it, you can get some good scrapings off of this. And that's what you have to do here, is you'd scrape along the flat edge here, usually supporting against that rock, because you have to put a good amount of pressure on here to get the shavings of the magnesium off. And what you want to do is get about a quarter-size pile of the shavings, and then you use the ferrocerium rod to make fire, actually. And that's the real difference between this and the other device, is that one creates sparks. With this and the magnesium, you actually create a flame. And when that really comes into play is if you're in very wet conditions. It's the most useful one out there.
for you hunters and backpackers that might have one of these in your kit, and you haven't used it or practiced with it, but you know that it's used to light a fire, before you find yourself in a very dangerous, potentially life-threatening situation where you're going to pull this out and use it, we highly advise that you get out there and practice first, because this thing takes skill to use. But once you have that skill, this thing will work in almost all conditions. That's something, you know, we really want to stress with this one. This one's pretty cool and all, but it really takes a flame to light a tinder in a wet start condition. So with one of these, we highly recommend that you carry your tinder, your own tinder, in a controlled circumstance. I have, this is my little tinder box. It's waterproof, and it's got all kinds of various tinders in there. And unless you are highly skilled with your native tinders in a wet start situation, these things aren't always the greatest. The classic design that's been around forever is my favorite. I have a chain of about 25 or 30 of these that I've worn out. We also want to talk for a little bit about backups. Just like illumination, we carry backup fire starters. And another important thing we want to stress is that the fire starter is not necessarily in our pack. We have all these pockets. We talk about that in a lot of our videos. The fire starter is on our person, so that if we lose our pack or our pack gets misplaced or whatever, we still have a way to start a fire. We see a lot of people, and it's in every survival book ever printed, the waterproof match case and waterproof matches. We take a lot of people out in the woods every year, all year, for all kinds of trips, and we see a lot of people bring these waterproof matches out there, and they are not nearly as reliable as you think they are. They're an okay backup, but do not rely on waterproof matches. Have the skill, have this, and you will have many fires. Waterproof matches, you'll only have so many fires as you have matches. We've seen those cases crack, break, fall apart. The matches, 1 out of 5 will light, and there seems to be some kind of shelf life on them. Another backup, my favorite actually, works great in the western states, does not work so good in the Midwest or Northeast, is the Fresnel Lens. And it's just a magnifying lens, and it's cool because it's a multifunction piece of gear. We pick these up for pennies on the dollar, and it's just this little magnifying lens. It's great if you have a splinter or something you need to take a close look at. You want to read your map, and like the ferrocerium rod, it does take a little bit of skill to use, and there's some tricks to it, and we show that in our other video, and we also show you how to make one of these out of a piece of ice. Now the thing about these is, if you drop this, you could start a forest fire. You have to treat this thing with respect. I can light a fire with this in 8 seconds in full sun here in the Rockies. Great backup, but like right now it's overcast. This thing would be utterly useless as far as fire starting today. So our primary tool, as always, is this. We have our backup tool, and yes, we do have our primitive fire starting skills that I mercifully have not used in a long time because it takes a lot of work. One last backup we want to talk about here is this. You know, these work pretty good, but it is a mechanical object. Mechanical objects can fail. I've had the wheel fall out of this, and the little bitty ferrocerium rod that's in there fly out from under the wheel. If it sits in your drawer for a long time, sometimes these gas valves just leak gas out. If it's sitting in your pack or on your person, something's pressing up against the gas valve, all the gas could leak out on you in a very short amount of time. And when it's cold out, this thing has to be kept close to your body to stay warm so that it'll off-gas, much like a lot of stoves. It's an okay backup, but definitely not something you want to risk your life on. So, thanks for stopping by. Check out our other videos on lighting fires with these types of devices. We hope you found this enjoyable. See you next time.